welcome Jessica.
Well, hi. Yeah. So last week we talked about intentionality. And so I'm going to kind of wrap up and summarize a little bit of what was talked about because I know some people weren't here last week for that. And just going into it, summarizing that part before continuing on, I think really helps. So the idea was that intentionality actually, like there's more to it than just like the basic level that I initially thought of with intentionality tends to be okay, like my intent of this is what I want the outcome to be, or I'm going to be very intentional with how I relate to this person. But as we were kind of going through talking about it, I realized that there's a deeper level to what intentionality really is. One way that you could word it is it's intentional consciousness. It's basically getting to the root, like opening your awareness to what actually is driving you, what causes you to respond in a different situation. And the more that you open that awareness, the more you're able to actually respond rather than react. And so it drives, like, the way that you interact with people. It drives the way that you relate to the Lord. It drives the way you even relate to yourself. And so intentionality goes so much deeper than just, it really is like an awareness. It's an awareness that brings you into the present moment. And in that present moment is where it just, the door opens up for true intentional encounters with relationship. So what does intentionality do? Like, why would this even be important? Well, I think it really helps us in growing in our relationships. And once again, it's our relationships with ourselves, with people around us, with creation, with the Father. So I think intentionality really is a very important thing. And I was really intrigued by, as I was kind of digging into this subject and talking with you guys last week, just how intentional the Father really is and everything that he does. Like when he created us out of who he is, out of his heart, out of love. He created us with love, out of love, by love. And his intent towards all of his creation is life. It's love, and it's light. But it's especially love because I kind of realized like life and light come out of, they're derived from love. So when I really boiled it down, I was like, yeah, his intent towards everything and how he created and how he interacts with it is love. And that's why I feel like we can have our intent set on other things, but we're out of alignment and something doesn't feel right within us and within all of creation when it's not aligned with the Father's intent of love. And so I feel like creation responds when we bring ourselves, when in our intent, in alignment with love, in alignment with the Father and what he's saying over us and over his creation. Creation responds from that place because it knows that. It knows that language. It understands it on a very root basis of where it came from. All of it came from love, came from his heart. So, like, a question that I want to come back to later, but I'll present it now, is what would it look like for creation to respond when we manifest as co-sons with our intentionality set on the Father? Like, what would that actually look like in creation? How would it respond? How within our bodies, within other people, within, just the atmosphere, within the birds, the animals. And so I really find that quite fascinating. And as I was thinking about that, the idea of, and I might have mentioned this last week when I'm going to go into this a little bit further, like water molecules are a beautiful example of this. And they're an example of this from the fact that intentionality, we can think of it as there can be big, massive changes that happen. And that's wonderful to celebrate that. But most of the time, it's these little tiny things. It's these little alignments. And so water molecules are a perfect example of that because when you speak life, when you speak love, water responds. The molecules, actually, the structure and what they create, they create these beautiful crystalline structures when words of life and truth and love, and, words that they know are from their Father, through you, it changes them on that molecular level. And so I started thinking about that, where it's like, we're made up of water. The atmosphere is made of, like, all living things, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, have water in them. And so it's just really fascinating when you think of, it starts on a molecular level, just the words, the intentionality in this love that we, that we give, and put out there, how that is changing things on a molecular level. And as that builds and builds and builds, what eventually that looks like. And that's where the unseen becomes the seen. That's where you literally see things manifest in front of you, but it's been building for a while. And so I think actually our bodies are a lot like that. But one little story I wanted to mention is, I remember it was quite a few years ago. It might have been like 15 or so years ago, but I still remember this. There was a stranger that I met once in a parking lot at a grocery store. And in that time, I was going through a season where I was very defeated. I did not know the Father's love. And so there was the way in which I would respond to things, like, it created an atmosphere around myself where I would oftentimes, like, go into a situation like that, and I just was walking through that parking lot, head down, apparently a frown on my face, because I just hear out of the blue this stranger say, would it kill you to smile? And, to phrase it that way really kind of caught me off guard, because I'm like, whoa, like, and in that place, I was used to being defeated, used to being beat up, used to, so I at first I almost took those words as, like, seriously, like what did I do to, like, mess up your day? But in that moment, I also realized, I was like, wow, it touched me, because I was like, this stranger, like, I lifted my eyes and I looked at him, and I realized there was a little gleam of a smile. It was pretty faint, but I was like, oh wow, like, he sees me, and he actually cares that I'm not smiling right now. And I tried to kind of pull up, it was a very weak smile, but I responded like that. But years later, I still remember that. And I remember the rest of that day just kind of kept going through my mind. I was like, well, for one, apparently I did have a frown on my face. How often do I have that? Is that how I feel about life most of the time? And here's this stranger who cared enough to call it out, and in an interesting way, challenged me to be like, no, like, your smile matters. And so one thing I really took out of that is that, because that was a very intentional moment. That was in just a beautiful moment in which the Lord used that person and his intentionality to show me that it's not even actually the things that we do, it's how he made me feel. That's what stuck with me. And that's what really just, like, changed something in me. It made me grab onto that moment. So that's one thing I really noticed about intentionality. It's, just as you're having these interactions with things, there is, like, it's not even necessarily exactly what you do. It's the way you're going to make that person feel. That's what's going to carry on, and that's what's going to change things. So another thing I really found super fascinating is intentionality and how your body responds to it. And one way, like the way that, Ronnie mentioned this, where he communicates with his heart, in order with intentionality. And so, like, there's this incredible way in which, was mentioning about how the molecules, things change. Just with the words and the intentionality they release over yourself, but at first you don't see it, because it has to be over and over, because it's happening on such a molecular level until it manifests into the scene. So with your body, disease, you've probably heard the phrase that it comes from your body being in a place of dis-ease, and dis-ease referring to, just a lot of anxiety, stress, different negative emotions that can really pull you down and put your body in this place where the molecular level, it's creating these structures that are negative. They're not of what the Lord has designed you to be. They're not in alignment with love. So the way that you can practice this, you can check your heart in any situation, an encounter with a person, an encounter with a circumstance. The idea is pause. Take time in the moment before you react. And it's in that space that you're allowing your heart to speak and that you're having this conversation with the Lord as well in that, where you're able to bring yourself into that present moment. Because it's not about what is going on in that present moment. It's from where your mind will take you. Your mind can take you either into, like, let's say, for example, you're in traffic and somebody slams on the horn at you and they're yelling at you and you're like, what? I didn't even do anything wrong. Like, you think I'm supposed to be doing this, but you're not in my situation. Well, if you pause and think, you can realize that in that moment, you can either respond out of a place of maybe the past. It reminds you of previous times that somebody did this, and then your mind will go into the cyclical place of getting so angry or frustrated. Oh, yeah, I remember when this person did this, and then I responded like that, and then this happened, and I got in that accident. And so the anxiety that will build from that. Or you could bring yourself into the future. And maybe the future is, you might be thinking, like, yeah, this person, what do they do? Like, they look like they're going to hit me from behind. Like, you start projecting what will happen in the future. So both of those places bring you out of the present moment. And in that present moment, you have everything you have need of. The Lord is right there. There is peace. There is how you react to that situation. But if you pull yourself into the past or into the future, you create a lot of anxiety. You create stress. You create fear. You create these stories that they're not even real. And so you're creating these things in your body. Like that's just one example. But you play that over and over. You're somebody who carries a lot of this anxiety. You react a lot. And as we mentioned last week, reaction actually is an easy way for me to explain the opposite of intentionality. Because it pulls you into a place you just react quickly. You're not aware of the present moment. So your body, it is amazing in the fact that when you're able to practice this, bring yourself into the awareness of that present moment and become intentional and align with the Father's love. Disease cannot thrive if there is no dis-ease. So yeah, I would just really encourage you guys to let the Father show you how light can change the atmosphere. Like letting the light of that intentionality and the love of that intentionality shine out of you, and how that can change the atmosphere around you in little increments. Like, it is always happening, but it happens within first, and then it expands outward, a bigger and bigger area that it affects. And so, yeah, like with that, you'll see where your intentionality will first tend to grow in how you are aware of your own consciousness and you're reacting to yourself and your interaction with the Father and realizing the Father's love and his provision and abundance in every moment and the peace in every moment in the present. And then it will eventually expand outward to other people being affected, to creation being affected. And this will flow out of a place of it just happening. It's not being forced. It's just, it flows out of the understanding of that. It flows out of it coming into alignment with that. And what I do love about intentionality with it, the Father being the one who showed us that to begin with, because he is so intentional. It's not something we have to strive for, because an encounter with love always will change you. Love never fails, and he's always so intentional that eventually it will break down even the strongest walls. And so if you're somebody who's concerned about, I've struggled with this, I've tried to be more intentional, it's like, no, it's not something you have to worry about. It's just every time that you even stop to realize, wow, I wasn't very intentional in that moment, you've already brought yourself right back to that awareness, to being intentional right in that moment. And so it's not something you have to beat yourself down about. which actually brings me into my next points, which are how do we grow in intentionality? So yeah, absolutely. Do not beat yourself up about it. It is never about, oh man, like I needed to be more intentional. I didn't do a good job with it. They're pulling yourself into the past with that, or into the future. Man, I'm never gonna get this. No, right in that moment, because you're even thinking about you are being intentional now, and you can celebrate that, and you can rest in that, and you can know that His love is transforming you, one molecule at a time, one atom, until that love just expands. And then another point that I found really interesting is, as I was reflecting, I was like, wow, busyness has a tendency to choke out intentionality. So when I was thinking about it, it's because busyness is embracing a lie that you're separate from that union with the Lord. You're separate from all His provisions in that moment, in that time. And it brings you into a place where oftentimes when I think of my own business, usually it's into the future, and this anxiety and this, I have to earn His love, I have to strive, I have to do this. And so I feel like busyness really does. It's a hindrance, and it's a very big thing in our society. But simplicity is something that opens up the ability for that awareness to grow. And that comes from a place of, there's a lot of competition in our culture, in our society. I think competition, it's this mindset that you're always competing against what a standard is. And it creates this complexity and this busyness. And so it is something you have to be very intentional, pull yourself back from, and create that simplicity in that space. And a story that I was reminded in the Bible when I was thinking about that, I was like, yeah, that's like Mary and Martha. That's exactly what was going on there. It was, with Mary with the busyness. She was essentially trying to earn His love in the busyness, and just, and there was nothing wrong with desiring His love, but she felt like she had to earn it. And Mary understood that she could just sit there in that moment at His feet, and just that was all that needed to happen in that space. And so to allow ourselves the ability to know, okay, you know what? Right now, I need to just take this time with you, Lord. I need to take this time to settle my heart. I need to take this time to sit in your peace and your rest, because if I continue forward, I'm realizing I have a lot of anxiety that's driving me, and my motives right now in getting this done or that done. And that's not good if it's out of those motives. So I'm going to come to this place of rest with you, and then we can do it together when I'm ready. Another thing I found super interesting is the idea of time frame and the eternal now, the present moment, and how this helps us with growing in intentionality. If we really start to realize that we have everything that we have need of in this current time, in this current moment, thinking of time as this eternal now, there is no past, there is no future. It is just what is right now. This is right where He is. And it creates this beautiful place of rest. So that kind of reinforces a lot of what I've already been mentioning. But another thing in that I found really fascinating was when you think about time as with the eternal now. It came up last week where it was asked, like, what can be done if maybe you had a situation with somebody that didn't turn out the way that you would have liked it to. You felt like, you could have handled it better. You reacted rather than responded. There is an idea where we are spirit beings just like our Father. And so we can, and any time where, man, I didn't like how I responded that way, Lord, and I know that your intentional heart and how to show love would not have been through that. I might not see that person again or have that opportunity to go talk to them in person, but I can go in the spirit and talk to them and make amends in that. And every time that you're doing that, you're also practicing intentionality. And I think beautiful, amazing things can result from that. And so that's just another way where I just find the Father's love is so incredible. It's so forgiving. We can't ever fail. We can't ever mess something up so bad that it can't. No, like it's amazing. So then another aspect is just setting our minds at the beginning of the day on what our intention is. And this was something that you mentioned, Tommy, last week, just a practice that you do with declarations or goals that you set just in visualize. And so this, I was reminded of the verse, like, set your heart on all things that are lovely, pure. And I know I'm butchering the verse, but just on everything that is honorable, that is loving, that is good. Set your heart on those things. And this can be done at the beginning of the day. It can be done at any point that you feel like you need a reset. And by filling yourself up with those kind of things, you're not giving yourself space. You're pushing out the other stuff. And you're automatically going to, in your interactions with things, that's going to flow out of you. And it's okay if you have to reset every 2 minutes. That's all right. Maybe that was a hard day. And that is absolutely okay. So other ways of doing this reflecting on those things, there's meditation, there's reflection, declarations, thanksgiving, journaling with the Lord, which is so beautiful. And that's just, you're filling yourself up. And one thing I was really highlighted to me in Thanksgiving that I thought was incredible is, like Thanksgiving is another incredible practice that opens up the space to be present in the moment. Once again, I'm like, everything is lining up with this awareness in the present moment. And Thanksgiving does that. It makes you realize that in that present moment, you have everything that you have need of. And it keeps you in that present moment when you are giving thanks, when you have a heart of gratitude. And that's something, scientists have there's so many studies on just that, and just the practice of doing that, and the reset that it does in your mind, the rewiring it does in your mind. So with all these different ideas, I would just encourage you guys to ask the Lord to highlight what it is that you just, would find fun to just practice and engage in. Because it's not about, oh man, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this better. Oh, that's right. I had intended to do a gratitude journal, and that was a year ago, and I haven't written in it. It's like that puts you're in the wrong spirit. That's of the wrong spirit. It's just whatever in that moment, it's okay. Just asking the Lord. And like I was saying before, to even think about intentionality already sets you in a place that is a good place. And then just open yourself up to just hopeful, innocent expectancy to what is the Lord going to do? What is the opportunity today that he wants me to be love? Whether it is to yourself, whether it is to another person, whether it's with him, whether it's to creation. It's like there's just so many ways that we can just be love. And so just this hopeful expectancy and this innocent, this childlike wonder where it's like, I can't wait to see what the opportunity is. And then celebrating those big moments for sure, like always celebrate those big moments, but realize too that it's those little moments that are just as important. Those little moments are some of the real miracles, and when we miss that, if we miss those little moments. Like just one thing I was thinking, I remember having a conversation with my brother recently where he was talking, he's been going through some hard things with feeling like his communication with the Lord isn't what he would have expected it to be. And I just was encouraged to just tell him, like, in that moment, it's like, just like the sunshine on our faces. It's like every little moment, just those little intimate moments with the Father. And so just to understand, to feel that, the sun on your face, and to know that that's the Father's gentle touch. Just to make a stranger smile, and just all these little things and how powerful they are. And to not knock yourself down as, man, I wish I could have this big impact, or I wish I could do this, or I missed that moment today. Remember all those little things. It's what one cell at a time, what molecule at a time changes and responds to love. And that love builds and builds until it literally explodes within that person that maybe was, that defeated person that you saw, that you made smile. And eventually that builds and builds until that love transforms them. And you may never see that, but know that it was your intentionality that played a part in that. So with all of these, I know, I'm opening it up for any questions, comments. But I do want to bring us back to that question. Like, what does it look like for creation to respond when we manifest as sons with our intentionality set on the Father? And maybe you guys have specific I'm sure you guys all have stories of seeing things respond around you with just releasing this intentionality, or maybe encounters with the Father's intentionality for you.
Very good, Jessica. Thank you. Yeah, I was just thinking about intentionality, and it's something that Meg and I have been doing for a few weeks now, and that it was actually prior to the election, but something that we've carried through, and that's to have communion every day. So we're very intentional about that, and we pray over the communion, take it, and pray over healing for all the people that we know that need healing. And then we have some declarations that we make. And we have a book by Arthur Burke and Cynthia Gunter, and it's really good. And it has where you speak to your spirit every day, and they have one for every day of the week. So we've been starting to do that during the communion time too. It's just a little something that takes 10 or 15 minutes, but we're real intentional about it. And like you said, don't do it as a task, do it out of love. Yeah, we do it out of love for the Lord and for each other, and it's been a very good experience. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome to do communion intentionally. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Actually, when you were mentioning that book, Speaking to Your Spirit, that stirred up a memory in me. When I was pregnant with Sterling, I had a book that I was going through that I would read out loud over him. I was very aware, like it was an intentional thing where I was like, I'm speaking to your spirit, I'm declaring these things over you. And I remember when he was born, and I looked into his eyes, I immediately knew that everything that I had spoken over him, like I could see it in his eyes. Yeah. Yeah, go for it. I'm not sure who that is on Zoom.
Oh, it's yeah, I'm not very good with this thing. I lost my face.
Is that Eric? I think
It's
I saw
Eric,
your
yeah.
face earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Nice.
switched it somehow because I was with the kids. Anyways, so I just had it's so funny. I loved everything you just said, by the way. And it when you were talking, the Lord just reminded me about something that just happened like yesterday. I was I was in the store and I was just buying a few things, and it was so funny because the guy in front of me he was just kind of going off about all the stuff he was upset about, and you know, we were all just kind of standing there, and I was just smiling. And anyways, he left, and the cashiers started talking to me, and I don't know, I was just feeling very joyful. But the lady behind me, all she had was one drink. It was just like one of those kombucha drinks. And I was like, "Oh yeah, put her drink on my stuff." And she just kind of looked up like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah." just put her drink on my tab. And she was like, you can't do that. And I was like, yeah, I can. I was like, do it right now. Do it. And it's like at first she was arguing, but then she finally relented. And it was like you could see everything about her body language changed. And and when she left, she was just so happy and smiling and was like, that's the best thing that happened to me today. And I got in the car and I was thinking, I should have said something about the Lord. And 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 then I just kind of let it go. And as you were talking, I just felt like the Lord was like, you know what? That little thing that you did for her opened up just her ability for me to love her a little bit more. And I just love the idea of that. Like, I didn't necessarily have to say anything about the Lord, but just loving a stranger and her allowing herself to be loved just by that one little simple act was a step towards just being loved by the Lord, just her allowing that into her life.
Yeah. Amen. That's amazing. Absolutely.
Hey, so something I do that I think is pretty cool is I try to be intentional about being intentional, which sounds really meta or nerdy. What's that? Rhetorical? No. So, for example, and everybody can do this, if you're at a store and there's a clerk or someone helping you, you can actually treat them like they're a person. Because most of the time, you may not notice this, but most of us, or many of us, just want them to do the thing so we can get out of there and move on. So a lot of times I will try to find if they have a name tag, try to figure out how to pronounce their name. I do silly things, like if they say their name is, I think her name was Rachel, and I said, is that Rachel with an R? And she'd laugh. It's like, of course it's with an R. But it's just something to shock them out of the everyday thing that they're, the doldrums of just doing something and not being appreciated for it. And so just letting them know in whatever way you can that you either appreciate them or you see them, I think has made a big impact. And so to me, when I practice doing that, it's easier than in other places where it might be someone I know or someone else I don't know. It's easier to become intentional because I think it's like practice makes perfect. You're just getting into the groove of recognizing people as being important. And I actually do this, I think God's just gifted me with it. I do this with kids, right? And kids love me for it, it seems. I actually look them in the eye and try to make eye contact with them rather than treat them like just a little ankle biter. I will treat them like a real person. And sometimes they can tell. And I think when they can tell that, they appreciate that. So then again, just intentionally being intentional.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. I actually was a cashier at one point, and I do remember that. And every time that you would have somebody come through that line that would actually have a real conversation, it would catch you off guard at first. It would sort of shock you and you'd almost have a hard time doing what you're supposed to do and talk to them because you're like, I don't get this practice very often. But it would always make me feel so good. Yeah. It was a wonderful reminder because you get sucked into the mundane in life, and we can all do that. Yeah. And man, it feels so special when you get acknowledged.
This always makes me cry, but God's intentional too. And one of the things that he does for me, and he's done it many, many times, is when we're driving down Crystal Park Road, which is all switchbacks, and you're busy watching the road, but there'll be a big buck standing there in the middle of the road or just slightly off, and he's got this full rack, and he's standing there in all of his majesty, and you can't help but realize that's God. That's him, So anyway, that's my special moment.
Oh, that's precious. I love that. Yeah, go ahead, Don.
This week, well, I've been reading a devotional by Reflections on the Shack. And one of the entries just recent was God has intentionally given us independence. And I thought, man, that's sort of interesting. But it goes on and later on and talks about if intentionality and love, if there is an intentionality there, it's really not love. So you have the independence to be intentional or not. And a friend of mine asked me one day this week, well, why did God put the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the garden? And it was sort of interesting to me, that question, in that intentionality. When we learn about his intentionality, I think, and he wants that intentionality, I mean, to be within us, to be intentional in our love for others. Otherwise, it's really not love. So thank you for bringing up this topic, because it really has caused a lot of thinking. And that, yeah, God has given us intentionally independence. Anyway, that's some thoughts.
Thank you, Don. I love that. I love how you worded that. Well, thank you, Jessica. Thank you, guys.